You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Holt.
Shoe lovers, welcome back to the world's greatest podcast on shoes.
Yeah,
Self-proclaimed world champion podcast.
That's all that matters, right? You just got to declare it yourself.
Name it and claim it, as they like to say. That's
People
right.
will follow once you do.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. That's all it takes in this digital age.
That's right.
I just need to buy about 1 billion bots and watch my Twitter followers skyrocket.
If you tweet it, it's real.
That's right. I guess it's probably true. That's exactly right. I'm joined with Matt Priest.
What's up, party people?
How are you?
Doing well.
Jasmine is here as well.
Hola, guys.
How are you?
Great.
Good. How's your feet feeling?
They're getting a little sore, but we're
There you
going to push
go.
through.
We've been running Jasmine all over effing platform, getting interviews with different folks.
She hates us now.
That's right. And now we've got a great catalog, and we've got another great guest who's sitting down with us. He's got a bit of an accent.
A bit of an accent.
But it is English.
It is English.
Proper English, yeah.
Proper English.
Who have we got today?
Guys, I don't have an accent.
It's John Saunders at the British Footwear Association.
John, how are you, buddy?
I'm very well indeed.
Welcome
Thank you
to the
very
show.
much. That's very kind of you to invite me to be on.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
My grandmother was English, so I feel like
Is
I'm
that
at
right?
home with you.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So I'm not going to be accused of causing the revolution or anything.
Not at all.
worries.
Not at
No.
all.
It all worked out well for all of
We
us.
wish you would have won. I mean, let's
Well,
face it.
no, the strange thing was when I worked for a certain American company, I was approached by a young lady once who asked me, she said, "Oh, you're here for Independence Weekend?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Do you celebrate Independence Week?" I said, "We're actually, it's not our proudest moment."
we wear black. We wear all black.
Yeah, we try to put it behind us. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The global knowledge of Americans,
Yeah.
there
Oh
you go,
my gosh.
right on
Yeah.
display.
Yeah.
But that's also why we have John on today, because we want to really drill into the British footwear marketplace.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of changes happening, of course, in Britain with Brexit,
Yeah.
with the global economy. It's starting to get a little bit better for everybody, which is great news. But we're particularly interested in learning a bit more about just in general the footwear industry in Britain, from the production and the brands that are there still making shoes, who are headquarters there, and kind of high street. What are the channels now in the UK? We look at the US and we see kind of the sea change in terms of brick and mortar versus e-commerce. Are you seeing the same thing in Britain and all that? So let's just jump right in and
Let's do it, man.
let's just
Yeah.
chat. Tell us a bit
Tally-ho.
about tell us a bit about the landscape in Britain today in
Look,
terms of brands and production.
Okay, in terms of brands, I mean, in production terms, we're making around about 6 million pairs of shoes
6 million?
in the UK. It's just around about £400 million worth of turnover. So I suppose on current exchange rate, that's about $400 million.
Yep.
Well, it's a little more actually,
Right.
about 30% more, isn't it? So yeah, it's 500-ish million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different than it was back in the 80s. I suppose the last boom in the UK in production terms was about 85, 89.
Then Thatcher.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose like America, a lot of stuff offshored.
Yep.
Sure.
The one thing we did hang on to in a big way, though, was our men's businesses. So if you look at the centre of Britain, I don't know whether you know, if you think of a map of Britain, the sort of strange, slightly on its side person. Right in the middle, about 180 miles north of London, is a county called Northamptonshire.
Right.
As you would say, Northamptonshire, as we say.
Yeah.
And it's there are still 15, 16 big companies making welted men's footwear. So what you would think of as really typical British businessmen's shoes. Doing really well. It's all middle to top to luxury end.
Yeah.
Right.
So that sector is producing probably around about about £2.5 million worth of the 6 million. So that's it offers sort of smallish pairage, but obviously a big value.
Sure.
And most of that is exported.
We had a guest on not too long ago, Paul from SGS, who lives in that area, and there's a football club that's got shoes on
The
its
Cobblers,
Yeah,
I think
on
it
its-
was.
yeah,
Well, that's Northampton.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because it's at the heart of the industry. Yeah.
Right.
The heart of the people there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still quite a major employer.
yeah.
There's about 4,000 people still making shoes in the UK.
Okay.
I suppose if you look back to the peak, it was a bit like the States. I suppose in the 80s we
Yeah.
were making about 180 million pairs, but we were making everything from bottom end, value shoes, right through to current day luxury shoes. So it was a very different market.
So even as a lot of that went offshore to China, Asia, just like in the U.S. marketplace, there's a lot of traditional great British brands that are still headquartered in England and Britain, still now managing kind of global hub for all the shoes going all over different places around the world. Talk about a bit about those brands. Who do you see as the foundational brands for the British footwear empire?
Probably the. Yeah, I'm getting on a bit, but I don't remember the empire.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, the most obvious brand is Clark's.
Sure. Yep.
They're based in the southwest of England, down in Street. Still, their global HQ is there. I mean, they're multi-billion-pound company. Design, all their R&D and design is still done in Street.
Yep.
In Somerset, they're pretty digital. So the chap.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. They've gone 3D and they've been very successful with that.
Your presentation yesterday about 3D and digitizing the whole industry.
Those are Clark samples.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, they're probably the most advanced we've got.
Yeah.
And interestingly, though, they are opening this coming year. They are opening a factory back in Street, making making the classic desert boots.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of onshoring coming back.
Okay.
So that's sort of healthy. It's happening quite naturally. I think people are realizing that there's some kudos in making shoes in the UK.
Sure.
But actually, ironically, probably there's more of a, what should I say? There's actually more of an attraction for people outside the UK than there is for people within the UK.
We have this similar dynamic.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest with you, US and the UK are very similar in their market dynamics.
Yeah.
The bigger retailers are getting bigger and stronger and more consolidated.
Yeah.
And our independent base, which was really the whole heart of the branded footwear industry, has shrunk dramatically. There's still some really good players left, but there are very few.
Who are those? Who are the?
There's companies called Clinkards. They come from the northeast of England. They were still are a family business run by Charles Clinkard, who's the third generation, I think. And they started with 8 stores around the Newcastle upon Tyne area, so in the northeast of England. And they now have spread pretty much across the whole of the UK. They've got 55 stores, 60 stores. There's a group in London called Johnson's, who are based out of Teddington, just outside London, so the more affluent sort of suburbs. There's Elts in the West Country. There's a couple of groups up in Scotland, a group called Rogerson and another one called Begg. So Rogerson are the sort of middle area, the sort of Edinburgh, Glasgow, and the southern counties. And then you go right up to the north, and there's a group called Begg Brothers that go around Inverness and Aberdeen and that sort of thing. Right. And then filling in the middle, there's lots of mum and pop individual stores.
Little boutiques and...
Yeah, there's been more growth in boutiques, I think. Boutiques that are doing clothes and shoes. That's really the big thing that's happened probably in the last 25 years. Brands, international brands like Zara coming in selling clothes and shoes, but we also had our own homegrown retailers like Marks and Spencer's, who were massively significant in the footwear business, really. But ostensibly they're clothing retailers that sell footwear as well. And I think that's been one of the major growths, and certainly for our menswear, our top-end menswear, welted shoes, actually menswear stores have actually become a really big destination for even the UK-made shoes.
Who are the big e-com players in England? Who are the one where if you go, whether it's the brands themselves or the Amazons, or who are some of the other e-com players?
Everybody's e-com now. Yeah. I mean, we started off as a supply-side association.
Right.
We only had manufacturers originally. Then we had people who were doing sourcing, R&D, but they were still on the supply side. It's getting very fluffy now and hazy because everybody's retailing.
Yeah.
You have to. So I would say 99% of our members have got transactional websites. But the big players are ASOS, Amazon.
Yeah.
Zalando. They operate in a big way.
Who has the Amazon kills it here. So who has the upper hand in the marketplace?
Pretty much the same. Yeah. Amazon. But ASOS are coming through very well. And there's brands or companies like Boohoo who are they're very cheap.
Yeah.
They started in clothing, but they sell a lot of shoes as well.
Does Zalando get you more access to European brands and the e-commerce space?
European penetration has been big in Britain, really, I think, since the 80s. So, early 80s.
Right.
The German brands, if you do find independents, they're a little bit, we always say that, like John Lewis departmental store is the middle classes of Britain shopping. It's a archetypal sort of reflection of what middle class looks like in retail terms.
What about Britain in terms of designers? When you think about, we can talk about all different types of shoes being made in Britain. You were talking about traditional men's shoes, but with these global headquarters that are still there, are we seeing an emerging, kind of youth coming back into the industry, or is it a stagnant in terms of employment, or are we seeing a resurgence? You said they're kind of reshoring some of the shoes on manufacturing, but are we seeing more people flock to footwear for design and development and things like that? Or
there's 3 university colleges in London focus on design, and they're always full. There's London College of Fashion, which is probably the most famous, and there's De Montfort in Leicester and Northampton, and they would produce probably about 100 graduates a year in pure footwear design.
Wow.
They don't all find jobs in the footwear industry. I think one of the big changes, really, I suppose, is the industry now is looking at actually training people for the future. It's quite like manufacturing in a lot of countries.
Right.
I think Western Europe and the West generally has been quite an aging population working in factories. And we're getting to a point where it's fairly critical now that we need to bring in younger people. But of course, for 2 or 3 generations, we've been telling people that if you need to go to university.
Right.
Really since Tony Blair's government, it's been encouraging more and more individuals to go and have a university education. And it was almost, I suppose, that if you didn't work hard, if you didn't get your exams, if you didn't get a degree, you could end up working in a factory, which is a little bit of a negative approach.
Right.
Yeah, but there are some really skilled opportunities coming up now because the average age is sort of late 40s to early 50s. We're starting to need to bring a lot of people in, younger people, and make the whole industry a little bit more attractive. And I think that's starting to happen.
Is that the average age within the footwear industry? 40s and 50s?
It would work through to that.
Yeah.
And they're getting real shoemakers, skilled shoemakers are getting very, very short supply.
Right.
And even operatives, people on a more operational basis, it's been difficult to recruit. And in some areas, they've actually been bringing people in from Europe, Eastern Europe particularly, where there is still quite a strong footwear industry, and they've been attracted to the UK because the wages have tended to be higher. One of the problems we've got is because we've now voted as a nation, rightly or wrongly, to leave the EU.
How's that going for you?
Well, you tell me. I was hoping you could answer that question.
Well, I keep reading The Economist trying to figure it out.
No, well, I think us too, really. It's a bit of a shot in the dark, to be brutally honest. We spent 40 years tying ourselves into not just a free trade agreement. It's an open market.
Right.
There is absolutely no difference selling shoes to a guy in Paris as there is to selling them in Manchester or wherever. There's no restrictions. You don't have any problems.
I don't think, there's been all the talk and all the studies about whether it'll have a positive or negative impact, and it came back that Brexit would have a small negative impact on the economy, and they'll still be doing these, and I think in the next year we'll still be talking about when the Brexit is actually going to happen and occur.
Yeah.
But I think even if they do, figure out the plan and what it looks like, in several years there'll be a renegotiation of that, because Europe will then realize, actually, it's not. We shouldn't have such an emotional jolt to kick them to the curb like they're trying to do right now. That we actually need to keep those economies integrated. So I think the longer it plays out, the better it will be for everybody, because cooler heads will prevail. They'll figure out some of it. But what curiously was, I was talking to one of my friends in London, and he said, it's all this talk about Brexit and all these different things. He goes, remember this: we have a huge banking sector, and anytime we want to keep all that banking sector here and even pull some from France, we'll just lower the tax on banks, bring them all over here, and we'll have all this capital sitting here. So he's like, it's not a simple answer anywhere across the board.
I think the thing is, I think it is a shock to the system, and I think obviously there was a reason people voted to leave. Those that voted to leave probably, we talk about globalization, but it's sort of true. There are areas where, where I live, it's done very well out of being part of Europe. They've got high-tech industries and pharmaceuticals, and the free access to 350 million people plus has been incredibly useful. But areas that had the heavy industries and the coal mining and steel and everything else, globalization has really hit those areas. And there have been redevelopments in the industry, but there are still towns that really don't have a lot. So you sort of understand it, but it is quite worrying. Yeah. But at the same time, we are. For a small country, there's only 65 million of us. We punch above our weight, and as you say, the city of London is, it vies with New York, and for first finance centre of the world, and that's not going to go away that quickly, I don't think. And somebody said to me last night, actually, well, if Ireland takes a bit of the euro banking, then you might get more of the Chinese guys moving in, because they want a piece of the action in London as well. So you're right. We can open up and change our model. That's not a great problem.
That's right.
Sorry. I was just going to say, getting back to the footwear side of things, I think there's a really exciting time now. It is small. Our industry is small, and I'm not trying to make out that it's enormous, but what we've got is good and world-renowned. And we've been working, one of the big projects we've been working on as a trade association with the industry has been to develop new apprenticeship standards, and we actually very proudly got our first one signed off only last month. So we'll be having a first cohort of young apprentices coming through our industry in mid of this year. And it's our 120th anniversary next year as a trade association.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I just thought I'd drop that in.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, my God.
We have a measly 75 years next year.
That's actually, for America, that's almost prehistoric. That's incredible.
When did that start, during the Victorian age? Is that when the...
Yeah, I wasn't there at the time.
I know.
But it's... no, it would be going back into the 1800s.
You said that there was some reshoring going on. There's some reshoring going on here in the U.S. as people try to figure out how they can get. Obviously, it's very specific product because of supply chains and all that. In terms of onshoring, and I guess this is a larger question about product. What's selling? What's trending in the U.K.? Maybe it's the same as the U.S. Maybe not. My guess is it's probably a lot of trainers, a lot of sneakers in the U.K.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Do you foresee a movement where somewhere like Adidas, which is in Germany, trying to set up small factories, moving into the UK, setting up something similar? Are we going to see sneakers kind of balance out?
Speed factory.
I can see that. Actually, the biggest maker of shoes in the UK is a company called Hotter, who are here at the show today.
Okay.
And they're making just under 2 million of our 6 million pairs of shoes.
Wow.
So they're a significant player, and they're growing very quickly. And they actually, with no disrespect to Hotter, they make shoes that other people would be making, maybe in the Far East.
Right.
So it's a comfort product with an injection molded outsole. And I know that they are looking at the possibility of reshoring more of the skills.
Right.
They make uppers, outside the UK.
Yeah.
And they finish the shoe and box it and design it, obviously, but they actually make the shoe in the UK. Now, I see probably the next big breakthrough is getting closing capacity back into the UK.
Right.
I think that's what we're missing. And a lot of these young designers who are coming along from the colleges and setting up their own brands, one of the big challenges they have, if they want to make close to home, they can't, because there really isn't the capacity.
Right.
Because the factories pretty much are rammed out. They're not enormous companies, and they haven't got free capacity. Right. So if we could in some way redevelop something that would help that side of it. That could be quite.
So is your garage going to open up? Are we going to clear it out? And
there is a possibility there, yeah. But they are little workshops that are opening up. There's one or two popping up, every year.
Let me ask you this: in the U.S., we have these clusters, and you've kind of alluded to some of it, but we have these clusters where the industry is located, and it's New York, Boston, Portland, Southern California. Give us the lay of the land of where the brands are, and then you talked about the manufacturing side, but where most of the brands, are they all in London, or are they scattered across?
No, they're not all in London. I mean, London's a significant centre.
Yeah.
It is the commercial centre, the biggest centre within the UK. So a lot of companies open up down there just simply because the connectivity's there.
Right.
But we talked about Clark's. They're 180 miles to the southwest of London. So there's a bit of a cluster around there, and it used to be very dominantly around sheepskins and down there because there were a lot of farms, breeding sheep, and the skins were not cattle; they were sheep. So you got quite a big slipper industry down there, and there's still clusters of people making high grade sheepskin slippers down that neck of the woods, as well as Clark's, who are the major employer. London is less important for manufacturing these days, but we've got a big company. They're making shoes that would compete very easily with high-end Italian ladies' court shoes. There's a company called Gina that are making footwear actually behind White Hart Lane, Tottenham.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Get on the tube to the Seven Sisters and then walk up a mile.
Not far away. Yeah. But they've got a great facility behind White Hart Lane in Tottenham and northeast London.
Yep.
Then you got the Midlands bunch, and it is mostly Northampton. There's a little cluster in Norwich where there used to be a very big ladies and kids business.
Yep.
There's still Start Right and Florida Shoes, Vandal Shoes are still there making some product. And then you've got the northwest running through Lancashire and into what is known as the Rosendale Valley, which again was a big slipper making area, but also was really where our volume footwear industry came from. The area that really has not recovered terribly well is Leicestershire. There used to be a massive, the British Shoe Corporation, you probably heard of. That went under back in, again, the 90s, and that took a lot of factories with it. And they were really the value, the mid-tier, as you'd call it, the mid-tier sort of producers. Yeah, so there's three or four sort of cluster areas.
Right.
Yeah.
And hottest product right now, sneakers, trainers. Is it a mix of product being sold?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I don't think if you landed in the UK, things would be too different.
Yeah. I was there in December, and there's just a lot of trainers. More trainers.
I mean, if you stand in places like Westfield or at the stations and watch people go to work, even guys going to work in the city in a suit, or women going in a nice business dress, they'll wear a pair of sneakers to commute in, and they'll put their dressier shoes on. So that's still enormous. And we, although New Balance is not a British company, the European HQ with manufacturing is in Cumbria. So there's a big facility making high-end training shoes in Cumbria for New Balance, and their marketing office is in Warrington in the northwest. And they have a facility again. I know you're going to go ding ding, but they do make custom football boots up there. So,
no, that's a plus, Blake.
Yeah.
Our producers lost control.
It was related to football. Come on.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Customization is that a big craze in the UK as well?
It's starting to come through very much. Yeah,
I think this is like the same thing as going on here. It really is.
I think that. The strange thing is probably one of the reasons I think probably Europe wasn't quite the thing that everybody wanted it to be. If you go to the continent, the EU is still dominant, I think, in people's thinking. It's very important. I think we've always floated somewhere between America and Europe. And our economy is very like yours. It's like the e-commerce business is growing like there's no tomorrow. I mean, that's 25%, I think, in terms of value now. It's massive. Yeah.
Still cannot understand why beans are served for breakfast.
Amen. And cold cuts and just weird stuff.
I mean, I eat it.
I know.
I eat it.
You have no choice.
Cold cuts?
Yeah.
We have bacon, hot bacon and eggs.
Hot bacon and eggs?
Yeah.
What other foods do you have?
Oh, we have nothing else.
Nothing else?
No. Porridge.
Fish and chips.
Porridge and fish and chips. Yeah.
And great music.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great,
I'll say
great
this.
music.
The world's best Indian food is in London.
I bet.
Hands down.
Yeah.
I bet.
All the great chefs are cooks.
Yeah.
Have since left
Atol
India and moved
Kutcher.
in, and then they
go to Atol Kutcher's restaurant in Berkeley Square.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
quite an experience.
Well, the funny thing is it's a lot like America. Like, we think of Chinese food, and you go to China, it's completely different, right? We just
Right.
make it our
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
It's the same thing. The Indian food, the masala, was never an Indian dish, and they came to England and they
Chicken
started
tikka
making
masala.
it. Yeah, and the
Made it
Brits
really
were like,
healthy by
"Where's the
putting loads of
gravy?
cream in it."
Where's the gravy? There's no gravy on it."
Some gravy.
Yeah. So all of a
Yeah,
sudden they
that's
create
right.
it. So
Yeah.
it's quite
No
funny.
gravy.
Yeah. And a bit of curry in as well. We didn't want to keep the authentic flavor.
Absolutely delicious.
Yeah,
though.
so if you're going to come to England, you find everything. We're like sponge.
Well, I did
we eat everything.
I did. I had my honeymoon was in London.
Yeah.
I've traveled there many times. In fact,
And you survived.
I did survive, and at one point, my cousins live out in Barnstable in Devon.
Oh,
so
okay,
I've taken
right.
a train from London to Exeter, got on a train in Exeter that was one car, and rode out to Barnstable, and had a lovely time out there on the West Coast.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful land out there.
Yeah. Saunton Sands and places like that. Yeah, beautiful. It goes on for miles. Beautiful hotels.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate all that you guys do on your end of the Atlantic. We're keeping this side of the Atlantic
the bookends
on lockdown. You guys are keeping that in, you know.
Well, I think,
But we have a good relationship. You know, you guys call with questions. We call you guys with
We are
questions,
probably,
so.
at the moment, we are the special relationship.
That's probably correct.
That's right. The only one you can actually depend on.
Are you talking about us personally?
Well, yeah. Why not? Yeah, but FDRA, BFA, we're there.
Keeping the diplomatic channels open by footwear.
Right. Yeah,
we'll slip a note in the shoes and ship it over.
Whether Theresa and
Mr.
Trump have had a bad day
we'll see
or
what
not.
happens.
Oh my gosh! Wait
We'll
till
see
they
what
get
happens.
together and for the state.
Yeah, I'm looking
visit,
forward
so.
to his state visit.
Oh
I
my
must
gosh.
be honest. That's going to be an interesting one.
Looking forward to it. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to London that week.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's for certain,
Exactly right.
Then the special relationship will be good.
Yeah.
I'll be there. Sort of. I'll wave the flag. Yeah. I'll be happy with the Star Spangled Banner there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And at this point in the show, we want to flip it over to Jasmine. Jasmine keeps us fashionable. So, Jasmine, this is our world-famous Fashion Footwear InFocus segment.
It's such a tough job, actually.
It is a tough job, but tell us what's fashionable right now in your mind as you walk the floor and you look around and think about our industry.
One thing that, while FN is going on, New York Fashion Week is also going on at the same time. So I've been kind of keeping up with both. Something that I've been seeing surprisingly is cowboy boots.
What?
It seems like
Really?
Talk about
everybody's
America,
doing
baby.
it. And this is something I've never owned. I own sneakers and slip-ons and heels, but I don't own any cowboy boots.
There we are.
That's
right. I think cowboy boots would be super.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Down the pub
I was also going to ask
down
that.
the pub in a pair of cowboy boots.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good talking point while you have your...
I wouldn't come out. Well, I might do, but it'd be horizontal.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite pint? Do you have a favorite brand of pint that you drink there?
Well, yes, I do. Actually.
Yeah, what is it?
It's called Poachers.
Poachers.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's actually brewed within about 4 miles of my house.
Oh, that's
We're heavily
that's lovely.
into craft beer.
Yeah.
Another thing we've got in common.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Mine is Landlord. Love it.
Oh, you go Timothy Taylor.
Timothy Taylor Landlord.
You do?
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite one. But for cowboy boots, going back to shoes.
Yeah,
Not a boot of beer, but the shoes.
Yeah.
The reason why I think cowboy boots are in vogue is maybe there's some resurgence of nationalism, but I don't think that's it. I think it's comfort, because when you put on cowboy boots, they are super comfortable, and once you have your foot broken into those things, you keep them for life.
It's like welted men's.
Yeah, exactly right.
As guys from the South, well, more South than me, have you ever owned a pair of cowboy boots?
I made a pair of cowboy boots at the H.H. Brown factory in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
And they have my initials on them.
Oh, my God.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I might
Do they have
try
a
this
fringe
out.
on them?
No fringe.
No fringe.
No fringe. A lot of embroidery, cool embroidery.
Yeah.
I've never owned them, but a lot of farmers and people like that.
Roy Rogers used to wear them as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, John Wayne.
Yeah.
Honestly, they looked a little uncomfortable to me.
They're not comfortable.
If you break in the right pair, I mean, if
the
you,
ones
if you
I
spend
made
the money,
are not comfortable.
well, no kidding. There's a reason why you're doing trade and not on the factory floor, Matt.
Indeed, my friend. Indeed.
Little truth telling there.
It's difficult making shoes.
Exactly.
Don't be hard on him. Yeah,
Very
Exactly.
difficult.
John, congratulations on 120 years at the
Yeah, thank
BFA
you.
next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
we're,
thank you.
we're rooting for you guys as you look to onshore more, and we want to hear more about the apprenticeship that you're doing, because I don't think it's too different from what we're seeing here
I'm sure
in
not.
terms of some of the higher-end shoes that are being made here and trying to find the right fit in terms of finding people to come back to the industry.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's really
we're rooting for you guys and what you're doing, and you can send us pictures of your garage when you clean it out and start setting up entrepreneurial little center there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Folks, this is Shoe In. We're covering all things footwear, including going global and looking at different footwear marketplaces around the world. We were with John Saunders with the British Footwear Association today. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And if they want to learn more about the BFA, what's the website?
www.britishfootwearassociation.co.uk. Very snappy.
.co.uk. Or you can Google it.
Or Google it.
Or Google it, right?
Yeah, British Footwear Association.
Great.
Yeah.
And folks, as always, if you have an idea on topics, if you have guests that you think you would like to hear from, please let us know. We'll definitely try to get them on the show. You can reach us on Twitter, on Facebook. You can follow us by clicking on the subscribe link to our iTunes so that you can get Shoe In downloaded every Monday into your podcast app. And definitely make sure you rate us on that. And if there's nothing else, Matt.
That's it, brother.
Nothing else, Jasmine.
Nope, all good.
John, thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you,
safe
America.
trip back home.
Thank
All right.
you. Yeah. I'm here all week.
All right. And until then, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.